A school shooting, multiple injuries, this time outside Denver. And what is somewhat different about this case so far, there were two shooting suspects.
We asked Michelle Miller to find out what she could about the suspect, TJ Lane.
As much as we wish school shootings were a thing of the past, they continue to occur, leaving behind a trail of devastation and heartbreak. When the perpetrators of these heinous crimes are finally brought to justice and sentenced,
sorry to everybody who I stole their innocence and high school experience.
the reactions can be just as varied as the individuals themselves. From stoic acceptance to tearful remorse, here are the top 10 school shooters reacting to life sentences. Number 1. TJ Lane. On the morning of February 27, 2012, a shooting took the lives of 3 students and injured 3 others. The incident shocked the community and sparked national attention on school shootings and gun violence. Chardon High School's cafeteria was open, and many students would gather there, some to have breakfast while others waited for a bus. It was reported that a male student stood up in the cafeteria and started firing, which caused confusion and disorder. Surveillance video showed the culprit, later identified as TJ Lane. Thomas Michael Lane III grew up in a troubled home environment full of domestic violence and criminal behavior. The culprit, a 17-year-old also known as TJ, was arrested, and he admitted to the shooting but couldn't explain why he did it. His mental state was questioned, but he was deemed competent to stand trial. In a courtroom packed with victims' families, the judge gave TJ Lane 3 consecutive life sentences for his heinous crimes. During his trial, TJ Lane made a shocking statement by unbuttoning his blue shirt to reveal a t-shirt on which he had scrawled an inappropriate word. This action showed his remorselessness in committing the heinous school shooting. The provocative gesture was seen by many as a show of disrespect to the families of the victims who had lost their lives in the tragic incident. Lane's behavior indicated his defiant and unremorseful attitude, evident throughout the proceedings. Throughout the trial, he smirked and gestured obscenely, clearly showing no regret for the gravity of his actions. The victims' relatives were allowed to speak at the sentencing, but TJ remained indifferent. The families shared their grief and loss with the court, but TJ continued to smirk and show a complete lack of empathy. His behavior was so inappropriate that even the judge was moved to address him, stating that he showed no signs of remorse or responsibility for his actions. On September 11, 2014, TJ Lane, along with 2 other inmates, escaped from prison. The news of his escape caused panic and worry among the authorities, who promptly shut down Chardon High School to ensure the safety of its students. However, the escape was short-lived, as Lane was caught less than 24 hours later. In the end, TJ was left to begin his life sentence, still smirking. It was a chilling reminder that sometimes the worst monsters hide in plain sight, and that even in the face of tragedy, some refuse to take responsibility for their actions. Number 2. Sky Bush. Sky Bush, a man from Crystal River, confessed to shooting a weapon through a door and injuring a student at Forest High School. The incident made the entire student body frightened for their safety, and the perpetrator was found guilty and sentenced to a lengthy prison term, leaving him no choice but to be down on the ground. Sky Bush planned to go to Forest High School in Ocala, Florida, and scare people. He prepared by putting his sawed-off shotgun in a guitar case, taking 2 pills, and wearing a tactical vest under his backpack. Bush felt ignored and wanted to go to jail, so he went to his former high school on April 20, 2018, and fired through a door, injuring a 17-year-old student in the ankle. Bush admitted to researching church and school shootings. He said he felt that church shootings got no attention in the media while school shootings received more publicity. When asked why he did it, Bush replied that it had been built up since he was a young child. Not being around good things, a lot of mental illness, violence, and neglect contributed to his outburst. Bush said it wasn't a good day, and he could have pumped the shotgun, but he just dropped it. He also apologized to the injured student, but acknowledged that the student could think what he wanted to. Bush was denied bail at his first court appearance, and his grandmother, Linda Costello, was present at the sentencing. Costello told the Star Banner that her grandson is sorry and nice. Bush asked the judge if he could get a lighter sentence, but the judge denied his request. Bush was sentenced to 30 years in prison for the shooting at Forest High School. Bush accepted a sentence of 30 years in prison and 30 years of probation to follow his release, requiring him to serve at least 25 years of the sentence. If he is released after serving the minimum time, he will be 47 years old. The incident involving Sky Bush at Forest High School in Ocala, Florida, is a tragic reminder of the consequences of neglecting mental health. It is important to prioritize mental health care and support and to provide resources for struggling people before it is too late. Number 3. Caleb Sharp. On September 13, 2017, Sharp brought multiple weapons to school and opened fire on his classmates, taking the life of Strahan, injuring 3 girls, and terrorizing dozens of others. He was arrested and brought to court. The courtroom was silent as the judge announced Caleb Sharp's sentence. Amy Strahan, the mother of one of Sharp's victims, watched the surveillance footage of the Freeman High School shooting with determination, tears streaming down her face. She had lost her son in the worst way possible, and Sharp had shown zero remorse. Sharp didn't react to the video, but his parents, seated behind him, closed their eyes. During his court hearing, the Freeman School shooter Caleb Sharp offered a public apology for the first time. He expressed remorse and stated that there was only one thing he could say, which was that he was sorry. Sharp addressed Amy Strahan, the mother of Sam Strahan, the girls he injured, and the entire community, acknowledging that he could never fully make amends for his actions. As Sharp spoke, Amy Strahan was in tears, comforted by her daughter Emily. Additionally, Sharp stated that he prays for forgiveness and hopes that the community and God can forgive him. Brooke Foley, Sharp's public defender, argued that because of his age and immaturity at the time of the shooting, Sharp should be considered a youthful offender and receive a sentence below the standard range. Foley asked for a 20-year fixed sentence, but the judge did not agree. Sharp will have to go before a sentencing review board before his release, and the board will evaluate his likelihood to re-offend and his level of rehabilitation. With credit for time served, it will be 35 years before he can request release. The judge ruled that the maximum sentence allowed by law, nearly 46 years to life in prison, would have been appropriate. The tragedy at Freeman High School is a stark reminder of the devastating impact of gun violence. It highlights the importance of gun control measures and mental health support for those who may be struggling. Amy Strahan and the other shooting victims will carry physical and emotional scars for the rest of their lives, while Sharp will spend decades behind bars. It's a sobering reminder that actions have consequences and that healing takes time. Number 4. Ethan Crumbley. On November 30th, 2021, Oxford High School was the site of one of Michigan's most devastating school shootings. 15-year-old Ethan Crumbley, a student at the school, entered the building with a loaded 9mm semi-automatic handgun, which he had obtained just 4 days prior. Crumbley had written in his journal that he would cause the biggest school shooting in Michigan's history and has fully mentally lost it. And tragically, he did exactly what he had planned. He took the lives of 3 students and injured 8 others. In court on Monday, April 24, 2023, Crumbley appeared in an orange jumpsuit with a medical mask pulled below his chin, pleading guilty to all charges. He was accused of taking the lives of 4 students and wounding 7 others, including a teacher. The prosecutor described it as a landmark case, and the judge asked him if it was his choice to plead guilty. Crumbley answered, "Yes, sir." The mother of Madison Baldwin, a 17-year-old victim, broke down in tears as soon as her daughter's name was mentioned in court. Crumbley confirmed that he had taken the lives of each victim, all identified by name, and admitted that he had retrieved the gun from an unlocked container in his home on the day of the shooting. Crumbley said he had hidden it in his backpack and pulled it out in a bathroom before opening fire on his schoolmates. Crumbley's parents, James and Jennifer Crumbley, who have pleaded not guilty to related charges, were charged over allegations involving their son's access to the gun. Crumbley's statement contradicted his parents' claims that the gun was securely stored. He told the judge that he gave his father money to buy him the gun he used in the mass shooting, and that the gun was easily accessible. Crumbley had written in his journal that the first victim should be a pretty girl with a future, so she could suffer like him. He confirmed in court that he deliberately hunted down the students, affirming what he had written in his journal. Crumbley, who now faces up to life in prison without parole, showed no emotion during the plea hearing, and his attorney, Paulette Michelle Lofton, said that he was definitely remorseful, despite his lack of emotion in court. Initially, Michelle Lofton had planned to plead insanity, but after the hearing, she noted that such a defense was difficult and that her client opted instead to plead guilty. Number 5. Brandon Spencer. Brandon Spencer, a 21-year-old man, was convicted of 4 counts of shooting 4 people at a Halloween party on the University of Southern California campus. He was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison. The court proceedings were emotional, with Spencer pounding his forehead twice on the desk and sobbing as the judge read his sentence. Spencer's defense attorney pleaded for a lenient sentence, citing the totality of his life, including his employment as a licensed security guard and his aspirations to attend college. However, the prosecution painted Spencer as a criminal with gang ties and used tweets from his phone as evidence. During the trial, they told the jury that Spencer was a documented, well-known gang member who had been shot in the stomach in August 2011 by an unidentified rival gang member. Before his sentencing, Spencer apologized in court, saying, "I'm sorry for what happened, but I can't spend the rest of my life in prison." However, when asked why he apologized, he clarified that he was sorry for what happened to the victims, not for committing the crime. Deputy District Attorney Antonella Nistorescu argued that Spencer was seeking revenge when he fired at Gino Hall, a reputed gang member, outside the party at USC. Hall, a former football standout at Crenshaw High School, testified that he had been talking to his girlfriend when he was hit and didn't know who did it or why. Nistorescu told the jury that gang members don't snitch and don't talk to the police, even to their rivals. According to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, Spencer and Hall had an ongoing feud over social media fueled by their gang rivalry. It's unclear what started the feud or why Spencer needed revenge by shooting Hall and 3 other innocent people. As Spencer was led away to begin his sentence, his family and friends wept and hugged each other. It's a tragic end to a young life full of promise, but ultimately derailed by poor choices and involvement in a dangerous gang lifestyle. The victims of his senseless violence will never fully recover from their physical and emotional wounds, and Spencer will spend the rest of his life behind bars, paying the price for his actions. It's a sobering reminder of the destructive power of gangs and the importance of steering young people away from such a destructive path. During his time in jail, Spencer has suffered physical and emotional setbacks. He has lost weight and is on antidepressants. Despite the support of his family and friends, Spencer struggles to maintain his composure in jail. Number 6. Carneal. On the morning of December 1st, 1997, a teenage boy named Carneal had a sinister plan brewing in his mind. He had wrapped a shotgun and a rifle in a blanket, disguising them as an art project, and carried a loaded pistol in his backpack. Accompanied by his sister, Carneal arrived at school at around 7:45 a.m. He quickly inserted earplugs into his ears and retrieved the pistol from his bag. Without hesitation, he began firing at a youth group of students, quickly unleashing 10 rounds of bullets. The horrific incident claimed the lives of 3 innocent girls, and 5 other students were gravely injured. Carneal's twisted plan had been executed, leaving the school community and the victims' families in shock and despair. He had a history of being bullied by other students and struggled with anxiety, depression, and severe paranoia. He exhibited behaviors such as covering up vents and windows in bathrooms because he believed someone was watching him. After the shooting, he was diagnosed with schizotypal personality disorder and dysthymia. Dewey Cornell and Diane Shetke, who evaluated him after the shooting, revised their diagnosis to schizophrenia. In October 1998, Michael Carneal, due to his mental illness, entered a guilty plea, which was accepted. As part of the plea agreement, the judge agreed to accept the plea on the condition that Carneal would be sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 25 years, which would be in 2022. Prosecutor Tim Kaltenbach stated that this plea arrangement allowed Carneal to receive mental health treatment while in prison for as long as necessary or until his release. Carneal expressed remorse for his actions and recognized that he only considered himself at the time of the shooting without considering the harm and devastation he would cause. Although he struggled to explain why he acted out, he acknowledged suffering from delusions and paranoia. He shared that the therapy and medication he received while in prison had helped stabilize his mental health. Despite his violent actions, he described himself as not being inherently violent. Recently, he tried to get parole. However, he may have eliminated any chance of parole when he testified that he still hears voices in his head like the ones he said told him to open fire in December 1997. Number 7. Dimitrios Pagortzis. In May 2018, a tragic school shooting occurred at Santa Fe High School in Santa Fe, Texas, taking the lives of 10 individuals, including 8 students and 2 teachers. 13 others were also injured. The perpetrator of the shooting was identified as 17-year-old student Dimitrios Pagortzis, who was later arrested. At the time, this shooting was considered the 3rd deadliest high school shooting in the United States. He began firing a weapon into an art class in the school at 7:32 a.m. The incident occurred in the school's art complex. During the shooting, a staff member pulled a fire alarm, causing most of the school to evacuate. Multiple students and coaches allegedly bullied Pagortzis, although the school denied the accusations against the coaches. According to one of his former teachers, Pagortzis was quiet but not in a creepy way, and he never wrote or drew anything suspicious or unusual in his class journal. He was an honor roll student and played football for the school. However, journals found on his computer and phone by police after the shooting indicated that he had planned to take his own life afterwards and had advertised his intentions. Pagortzis told police that he intended to harm the classmates he shot and spare those he liked so he could have his story told. He was charged with the capital deaths of multiple people and aggravated assault against a police officer and was held without bond in the Galveston County Jail. As he was a minor during the shooting, he is ineligible for the death penalty or life without parole. He faces a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 40 years. Upon entering the court, he seemed calm and showed no remorse for his actions. He answered every question without even stuttering. After the Santa Fe High School shooting, students organized a candlelight vigil to honor the victims on May 18th. 10 white crosses were placed in front of the school to memorialize the deceased. However, the crosses were removed before the start of the next school year, and families of the victims were allowed to take home any items left at the memorial for their loved ones. President Trump ordered all U.S. flags to be flown at half-staff from May 18th until May 22nd to show respect for the victims. The family of Pagortzis released a statement expressing their condolences to the victims and thanking the first responders for their help. 8. Barry Lukaitis. On February 2, 1996, a school shooting occurred at Frontier Middle School in Moses Lake, Washington, USA. The perpetrator was 14-year-old Barry Dale Lukaitis, who shot and took the lives of his algebra teacher and 2 students and held his classmates hostage before being subdued by a gym coach. During the incident at Frontier Middle School, the shooter, Barry Dale Lukaitis, arrived at school dressed in a Wild West-style outfit with a black duster. He brought with him a hunting rifle and 2 handguns that belonged to his father. After walking from his house to the school, he entered his algebra classroom during the 5th period. The Lukaitis family was dealing with several issues, and their home environment was dysfunctional, leading to his parents' separation in 1995. Barry's mother filed for divorce in January 1996 after discovering her husband's infidelity. Psychologists hired by the defense believed that Barry Lukaitis had depression or bipolar disorder. At the same time, Dr. Alan Eunice, a professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at the University of Washington and a prosecution witness, diagnosed him with dysthymic disorder. The Spokane Court of Appeals had to determine whether to try Lukaitis as an adult or a juvenile. In July, Judge Evan Sperline allowed court-appointed psychiatrist Joan Petrick to present testimony regarding Lukaitis' mental health. Due to the media's attention, the trial was moved from Spokane to Seattle, Washington. Lukaitis pleaded insanity on all charges, but in 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that people convicted of committing a capital crime when they were under 18 years old could not receive automatic life terms without parole. In 2016, the policy was applied retroactively. During a resentencing in 2017, Lukaitis apologized for the first time, saying it was because he was weak and stupid. He was sentenced to 189 years in prison. Number 9. Nicholas Cruz. Nicholas Cruz has had a history of behavioral issues since he was a preschooler. He attended 6 different schools in 3 years due to these issues. There were reports of him making threats against other students. In 2018, Nicholas Cruz, who was 19 years old, carried out a shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Cruz took the lives of 17 individuals and caused injuries to another 17. He fled the scene on foot, blending in with other students. Law enforcement officials arrested him without incident approximately 1 hour later in nearby Coral Springs. Nicholas Cruz sat shackled in a red jumpsuit, listening intently as Judge Elizabeth Scherer handed him a sentence of life without parole. The courtroom was tense, as the families of Cruz's 17 dead victims had spent 2 days criticizing him for his actions. Cruz had been found guilty of the massacre and of harming those he wounded. The jury in his penalty trial had voted 9-3 on October 13th to take his life, but Florida law required unanimity for that sentence to be imposed. Cruz acknowledged that he was on medication, but could understand what was happening under questioning from the judge. The sentencing came after 2 days of parents, siblings, spouses, and others of the slain victims, and some surviving wounded, taking turns addressing Cruz face to face. The judge commended the families and wounded who testified, calling them strong, graceful, and patient. "I know you are going to be okay because you have each other," Scherer said. Many family members criticized the law requiring jury unanimity for the other sentence during their impact statements. Linda Beigel Schulman, the mother of teacher Scott Beigel, had spoken of vengeance when it was her turn to confront Cruz. She said, "Real justice would be done if every family here were given a bullet and your AR-15. Cruz's reaction was a little shocking. He stared at the speakers but showed little emotion, as he did the day before. This was shocking because he had viciously attacked a prison guard just before appearing in court. Jennifer Guttenberg, the mother of victim Jamie Guttenberg, got up to speak. She admonished Cruz for hiding his face and expressions behind a blue COVID mask, prompting Cruz to remove the face covering. Beigel Schulman said she takes some comfort in knowing that Cruz is headed to a maximum security prison where he will have to worry constantly about his safety for the rest of his life. The judge's sentence of life without parole was a small consolation for the families of the victims, who will never be able to fully recover from their loss. But it was a step towards their healing. Number 10. Devin Erickson. Devin Erickson was convicted of 46 charges in the passing of Kendrick Castillo, an 18-year-old senior who was hailed as a hero for trying to stop the attack on a classroom at STEM School Highlands Ranch, south of Denver. Erickson partnered with fellow student Alec McKinney in the 2019 shooting. McKinney had planned the attack for weeks and intended to target classmates who repeatedly mocked him because he was transgender. Erickson was 18 years old at the time of the attack, which meant that he faced a mandatory life sentence. After a lengthy and emotional hearing in which survivors shared their pain, trauma, and disruption to their lives, Judge Teresa Michelle Slade added hundreds of years of prison time to Erickson's life sentence for multiple charges and counts. Erickson and McKinney targeted a classroom of students sitting in the dark as they watched a movie at the end of their senior year. The two entered through separate doors to maximize the number of students they could fatally harm. Erickson displayed virtually no emotion, but just after his parents, sister, and grandfather told him they loved him in their testimony, his voice broke when the judge asked if he wanted to speak. He declined, and the judge said, "I don't think there is anything I can say to you, Mr. Erickson, that would make any difference," recounting how the shooting had devastated not only those at the school and their families, but also untold numbers of people beyond the suburban community where the school is located. The judge said that she found the two pieces of evidence fake and illegitimate, and that Erickson was guilty of everything. Erickson never tried to explain his actions, leaving a gaping hole for a community seeking at least some sense of closure. McKinney, who was 16 at the time of the shooting, was sentenced to life in prison, but could become eligible for parole after about 20 years under a program for juvenile offenders. Erickson's trial was a devastating reminder of the impact of gun violence on communities and families. It is a tragedy that so many young people lost their lives, and so many more have been left to deal with the aftermath of the shooting. The survivors' stories were a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit.